Thanks for joining us today. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. Coming up on today's edition of Business Daily. Is Samsung finally recovering from its embarrassing Note 7 disaster last year? 260,000 units of its new Galaxy S8 series have been registered on the first day of its preliminary release. With less than 3 weeks to go until the presidential election here in Korea, we take a look at what economic pledges candidates have put out to revamp Asia's fourth largest economy. These stories and more coming right up. But first, Korea's producer prices fell for the first time in 8 months in March. According to the Bank of Korea, the country's producer price index, a barometer for inflation, came in at 102.59 last month. The figure is down 0.1% from February and marks the first fall since July. The decline comes on the back of weaker global oil prices and a stronger won against the U.S. dollar. Korea's benchmark Dubai crude fell almost 6% in March from the month before, while the Korean won gained 0.9% against the greenback. Korea's exports of industrial parts and materials recorded double-digit growth in the first quarter for the first time in 5.5 years. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy said parts and materials exports saw an 11% jump from the same time last year and also accounted for nearly half of Korea's overall exports in the January through March period. Chemical products led the gains, making up a quarter of the sector's outbound shipments, followed by primary metals and electronic parts. Destination-wise, China snapped up $20 billion worth of the parts and materials, which was 1.5% more from a year earlier. U.S.-bound exports, however, were down 1.8% at $6.8 billion. The International Monetary Fund has revised up this year's growth outlook for Korea. While the upward revision is in line with the latest forecasts from other major local financial institutions, experts say it's too early to feel overly optimistic about the future. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
The IMF expects the Korean economy to expand 2.7% this year. That's up from its previous forecast of 2.6% made in March. The revision reflects the Bank of Korea's latest growth estimates, but also an improvement in the global economy, which the IMF forecast to grow 3.5% this year, up 0.1 of a percentage point from its earlier projection. Other bodies have also recently raised their outlooks for Korea. The state-run Korea Development Institute now forecasts 2.6% growth, up from 2.4%, and the Bank of Korea also at 2.6%, up 0.1 percentage point. The upward revisions have been attributed to a recovery in the country's exports, driven by a modest recovery in the global economy. Korea's exports have been on an upward trend since last November, putting an end to nearly 2 years of decline. But it's a little too early to say Korea's recovery momentum is strong, as the local economy still faces a number of obstacles in its path. There are concerns that more protectionism from the U.S. could weigh on Korea's export recovery. Plus, if U.S. interest rates keep rising and eventually overtake Korea's, that could trigger a capital outflow. At-home geopolitical risks on the Korean peninsula could take a toll on financial stability and hurt already dampened consumer sentiment and investment.
Korea has been mired in a political scandal since late last year, so conglomerates haven't stepped up to investment yet, and corporate restructuring has been slow. Korea still needs to be able to sort these problems out before it can take the economy to the next level. What we're seeing now is a rebound after hitting rock bottom.
Some experts say that because Korea's recent recovery is due in part to global factors, it's unclear what the future may hold. For now, they say the new administration, which takes over in May, will have to focus on risk management and maintaining flexible fiscal policies to cushion potential risks at home and abroad. Kim Min-ji, Business Daily.
Korea's finance minister has promised nearly $9 billion to help business ventures and startups on the back of positive signs in the nation's economy. Finance Minister Yoo said on Wednesday that there's a growing belief that spring is in the air for the Korean economy, with first quarter growth expected to exceed previous forecasts and conditions on the employment front looking better than feared. He added that these positive views are gaining momentum with the IMF, the Bank of Korea, and research institutes at home and abroad, raising their forecasts for Korea's growth prospects for this year. To stabilize the foundation for recovery, the finance minister said the government will provide 10 trillion Korean won, or about $8.8 billion over the next 3 years, to help foster venture projects and startups. A much-needed bailout package looks to be within reach for indebted Daewoo Shipbuilding and Marine Engineering, following a bondholder approval for a multi-million-dollar debt-for-equity swap deal on Tuesday. According to industry sources, some 95% of the 200 billion won in unsecured loans maturing April of next year has also been green-lit, with the remaining 10 billion won expected to come through sometime today. If this latest hurdle is cleared, the world's second-largest shipyard stands to unlock a $2.6 billion bailout package that would enable it to continue operations and fulfill orders for new ships. As of February, Daewoo Shipbuilding had 108 ships on its log, accounting for the most in the world. Daewoo CEO Chung Sung-nip promised continued quote-unquote bone-grinding efforts to normalize the company. And moving on to markets, to give us a brief picture of this week's stock market action, we have our Business Daily's markets contributor Choi Jin-seok joining us on the phone today. Hello, Jin-seok.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so how are things looking on today's stock market?
After 2 consecutive gains, the Kospi market reversed its trend again. The Kospi fell by 0.47% to close at 2138.4, while the Kosdaq fluctuated throughout the session to close at 635, up by 0.2% compared to the previous session. The Kospi market rose again yesterday, largely thanks to foreign investors who shifted their position to buy shares. However, foreigners unloaded massive amounts of shares to drag down the entire index today. The U.S. equity market that closed with a sluggish picture overnight spooked sentiment among foreign investors. Most sectors and blue-chip stocks were sluggish. Hyundai Motor Group shares fell sharply after U.S. Vice President Mike Pence, who wrapped up his trip to Korea yesterday, signaled potential adjustments could be made to the free trade agreement between Korea and the U.S.
Now, you mentioned the sluggish performance in the U.S. stock market, and weak earnings reports have been affecting sentiment, right?
That's right. More specifically, Goldman Sachs sent shockwaves throughout the market with unexpectedly weak earnings results. The bank's revenue and earnings per share, or EPS, were well below market expectations in Q1. Share prices of Goldman Sachs plummeted by 4.7% overnight, affecting the entire financial sector as well as the market. Typically, major banks in the U.S. record robust earnings in the first quarter, helped by trading revenues and profits. However, sluggish results by Goldman Sachs are expected to lower expectations going forward.
And with this downturn in sentiment, there are concerns about the possibility of a potential correction in global markets. So what are the prospects of this?
Although global equity markets have been hit by weak earnings and rising geopolitical risks, experts still think we can expect positive trends going forward. MarketWatch said the U.S. market will give a chance for investors to buy shares after a slight correction. Although the volatility index has risen in recent days, it's still within the normal range, the firm said. Projections for the Korea market seem quite rosy too. Global research firm Lombard recently raised its outlook on the Korean market while selecting Germany as the most attractive market. The firm said despite political risks and turmoil, Korea is likely to go through cyclical economic recovery. The market is still undervalued, the firm added. This has been Choi Jin-seok for Business Daily.
Samsung Electronics may have put last year's Note 7 disaster behind it with the launch of its new Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus smartphones. According to data from 3 major mobile carriers, around 260,000 pre-ordered S8 smartphones had been activated under new accounts here in Korea as of Tuesday night. And Samsung aims to sell over 60 million units of its S8 model globally this year after its official release on Friday. Our Lee Ju-young has more.
Stab it, slice it, or even take it apart.
These are just some of the methods that Samsung used to put roughly 100,000 batteries to the test for its new Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus smartphones. This reflects Korea's biggest tech firm's determination to prevent any battery fiasco, even putting in place a comprehensive 8-point battery safety check to ensure future phones do not suffer the same fate. Its battery efficiency is even better now, despite new and improved features, including bigger screens and its very own voice assistant, Bixby. Power consumption has been reduced by nearly 20%.
We have even added additional tests carried out by phone manufacturers. We are confident that this phone is safer than ever.
The response ahead of the official release on April 21st has been positive. Samsung Galaxy S8 pre-orders have already hit the 1 million unit milestone over the 11-day period in Korea alone, becoming the country's most popular pre-ordered phone, significantly outpacing the S7's pre-order sales over a period of 2 weeks. While Samsung has not yet revealed global pre-order figures, it says recovering its lost market share in China is crucial. After recalling over 190,000 Galaxy Note 7 handsets in China last year, Samsung's market share dropped to 5th place, now trailing local brands like Huawei and Vivo.
Chinese firms are ramping up technological innovations, but we will work even harder.
Samsung says it's betting on its 6GB of RAM exclusively for the mainland China market, compared to the 4GB offered to the rest of the world. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
Korea's 5 main presidential candidates have submitted their top 10 pledges to the National Election Commission after kicking off their official campaigns earlier this week. And today we'll put their key economic pledges under the microscope to see how they'll affect people's livelihoods and look especially closely at their ideas on job creation. Our Kim Ji-yeon sums it up for us.
Each of the 5 main presidential candidates have different ideas and approaches on how to boost the number of quality jobs and tackle Korea's record-high youth unemployment. Following the order in which they're listed by the National Election Commission, first off is Moon Jae-in, the former leader of the Democratic Party of Korea. Moon's overall take on economic policies is represented by big government, characterized by high taxation and public spending, in order to create a virtuous economic cycle that will boost the number of jobs, household incomes, and consumption. This big government philosophy is reflected in Moon's Jaenomics, or Jaenomics, which pushes for greater investment in people and their labor to boost corporate competitiveness and ultimately the overall economy. Under his plan, Moon says he will draw up a massive supplementary budget, which has been likened to a Korean New Deal policy. The aim is to create 810,000 new jobs in the public sector related to the fields of healthcare, welfare, nursing, firefighting, and law enforcement, as well as those tied to tech development in the so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution. He also wants to create more jobs by enforcing the current labor law so that employee working hours cap at 52 hours a week. Gyeongsang-namdo Province Governor Hong Jun-pyo from the conservative Liberty Korea Party, on the other hand, is pushing for small government with deregulatory measures and incentives, seeing it as the best way to boost the free market economy and provide a business-friendly environment. For the creation of jobs in the so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution, Hong says he wants to create a green light to all requests seeking to approval to run businesses, except for specific cases banned by law. Under his administration, Hong says the principle would be that if the government imposes a ban, 2 existing regulations should be abolished in its place. Hong says he will also get rid of the country's hardline labor unions, which he says are too one-sided and exist solely for the purpose of instigating strikes nationwide, resulting in lower competitiveness among businesses and a rigid job market. Ahn Cheol-soo, the co-founder of the minor opposition People's Party, focuses on the development of science and technology and sees it as a path toward job creation. To better prepare for the so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution, As a long-term goal, An says he aims to nurture 100,000 experts in the sector through reforms in the current education system to encourage more creative thinking. In the shorter term, An says he aims to tackle the country's youth unemployment by providing financial aid worth more than $10.5 thousand per person over a 2-year period to young employees who get jobs at small and medium-sized companies. An believes this will not only relieve the financial burden of young job seekers who are heavily focused on landing jobs that ensure high stability, such as government or conglomerate positions, but also boost the number of SMEs, which he says will lead to the development of new markets through tech breakthroughs. Similar to An, Yoo Sung-min from the splinter conservative group Padam Party also places emphasis on boosting the number of SMEs, particularly among the youth for job creation and economic growth. Yoo has vowed to create a favorable environment that encourages people to start their own business by changing the way they finance their projects from the current method of seeking loans to receiving investments. Yoo says he will expand tax benefits for successful investments in venture projects and provide tax returns if the investment fails. He says he will also lower barriers to encourage mergers and acquisition of startups, as well as get rid of business regulations to make it easier for successful startups to get listed on the country's stock market. Yoo says he will increase startup-related incubators at universities and make it mandatory for them to provide education on how to open up a business. Last but not least, Shim Sang-jung from the leftist minor Progressive Justice Party focuses on the reducing wealth polarization in the country and rethinking how existing wealth can be evenly distributed to the masses and to those who are vulnerable. Her main economic pledge is focused on providing a way to finance the country's welfare policies by creating a new tax called a social welfare tax, which would be used solely to finance the country's welfare projects. On job creation, Shim says she will prohibit companies from hiring irregular workers for tasks that require permanent positions to encourage them to employ salaried workers instead. Starting 2022, she'll push to make it mandatory for the workday to end at 5 p.m. instead of 6 and limit working hours to 35 hours a week by 2025 from the current 52 hours. All 5 candidates agree the minimum wage should be raised to $8.80 by 2020 from the current $5.70. The candidates also hope to address Korea's $1.3 trillion in household debt, which is seen as being exacerbated by record low interest rates and people's heavy reliance on the housing market as a means to accumulate assets. Moon says the government should limit potential home buyers from purchasing a house if their household debt exceeds 150% of disposable income, while Shim proposes local banks should tighten their debt-to-income ratio from the current 60% to 40% for home buyers. The other 3 candidates, although they've not laid their related plans in their presidential pledges, said they will come up with their own measures to tackle the debt issue and make it harder for prospective home buyers to purchase real estate if it results in more debt. Kim Ji-yeon, Business Daily.
On this 4.3 million square meter plot of land, which is equivalent to about 600 soccer stadiums, sits a heavy industry company supplying core power generation equipment to the thermal and nuclear sectors with an annual turnover of $11.6 billion. We take you to Doosan Heavy Industries and Construction in the southern city of Changwon.
The city of Changwon on the southern coast of Korea is home to a massive complex of Doosan shops. Built in June 1982, the Changwon plant manufactures core products for industrial facilities and supplies them to power plants around the world. Doosan is Korea's leading EPC, or engineering, procurement, and construction contractor capable of providing turnkey solutions.
We have integrated production system here, which means capable of handling all processes from material handling to final product manufacturing. Currently, 4,600 employees are working in this Changwon complex, which is headquarters, but the total number of employees in Korea is around 8,000.
The power consists of 8 colossal shops, the corporate R&D center, and dockside cranes. It offers regular shop tours to students from both home and abroad as part of its industry academic collaboration programs. The visitors head to the fourth shop where everything is at full blast, from roaring flames to thundering energy. Metal is heated to 1,300 degrees Celsius and shaped by a 13,000-ton press. Every year, the shop supplies about 140,000 tons of core materials to industrial facilities, including power plants, shipyards, and steel mills. The students are overwhelmed by the sheer size of the shop and metal parts.
It was amazing to watch large metal parts being heated to red hot. It was great to learn about the manufacturing process.
As the process involves heating the metal to extremely high temperatures for easy shaping, the workers are exposed to intense heat.
An indirect press is used to improve the vulnerable structure of castings. It refines and strengthens their grain structure.
The next shop manufactures turbines, which are core elements used in power plants. Turbines use the kinetic energy of the moving blades to generate electricity. They are mass-produced using dozens of huge machines.
We manufacture, test operate, and supply turbine generators to nuclear, thermal, and combined cycle power plants. The shop is approximately 380 meters long and 180 meters wide, about the equivalent to 9 soccer stadiums combined. It is the largest shop with a roof in Korea.
High temperature and high pressure steam is used to rotate a 2,000 blade turbine 60 times per second. If a single defect is found, the whole machine is scrapped. It is a task that requires intense focus and concentration. Next is the country's only facility that produces nuclear components and equipment such as nuclear reactors, steam generators, and pressurizers. It offers a turnkey service covering the design, production, installation, and test operation of equipment. Doosan has cemented its top position in the global market, along with other leading players in Europe or Japan. It has won numerous power plant orders from all over the world, including the US, China, and Arab Emirates.
We are as good as other leading players in terms of shop size, manufacturing equipment, experience, and manpower. In particular, our recent project experience gave us unrivaled capabilities within the sector.
The company has also tapped into the new and renewable energy sector. It is a leading supplier of wind turbines in Korea. Working at Doosan is a dream job for many foreign engineers. This future Doosan employee is thrilled to see the cutting-edge facilities and equipment.
Pressing machines, it's a wonderful equipment. I'm always happy to have a look on such kind of hardware installed and being operated.
Thanks to its quality power plant equipment and top-notch technology, Doosan is a dominant force in the global power plant services market. The company won $8 billion worth of contracts last year despite the economic downturn and fall in oil prices. It aims to push the number to $8.9 billion this year. Roars of generators and intensely hot steam do not slow down the workers here. They take pride in Doosan's history of turning a crisis into an opportunity.
I feel proud when the products we've made are internationally recognized for their high quality. It's a rewarding experience.
Based on our quality and technology, we'll be a global leader that enhances the value of the world.
Cold metal turns into high-tech industrial components and products through the blast furnace. Doosan Heavy Industries and Construction leads the global EPC sector, offering a complete set of solutions that deliver value to businesses. We look forward to seeing what the future holds for the plant builder.
And that wraps it up for today. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with more at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. Until then, goodbye.